Hello and welcome back to part 24 of my journey towards my Bachelor's of Science Information Technology degree from Western Governors University. Today's video is all about the class I've just completed, and that is Database Applications, which is class number C170, and it's worth 4 credit units. So where to start? Well, if you watch my previous videos, you'll know that I'm not a massive database fan. In fact, I barely passed a foundation course, which was the one previous to this class, and unfortunately this was no different. I did pass, but I just squeaked over the line. Now, the truth is I took about 9 days to pass this class. Now, most people might say, well, that's really good, 9 days. But when you actually consider the actual amount of hours in that 9 days I put in, not so much. I would say, I kid you not, maybe 40 or 50 hours. Basically, every breathing minute that I wasn't at work or kind of not around with my family, I was basically studying for this class. And honestly, I still struggled. So what I want to say, though, is just because I struggled doesn't mean you will. So everybody's mind thinks differently, and some people might find this class very, very easy. So, for example, if you're a DBA or if you've got any kind of experience in data administration, you might find this class straightforward. And even if you haven't, you still might. I mean, it takes a certain mind to kind of figure out a lot of these queries and to understand the questions. So all I'm saying to you is just because I struggled doesn't mean you will. But for me, it was a bit of a slog. I got there in the end, and boy, am I glad it's over. So this video today will just be giving you some overview of the class and some tips I think will at least help you hopefully get through it and pass the class. So let's talk about the material that Western Governors University provide for this class. Well, there's a lot of it, and honestly, you're going to need it probably to pass, especially if you've got no experience at all. They break the most of it down into 6 main areas, and hopefully I'm putting up on the screen for you now. Each of these 6 areas, there's practice tests, there's obviously the lessons, there's labs, which I'll come back to in a little while, which is important, and also some flashcards. Again, if you've got no previous experience, I would strongly recommend that you go through each of these different lessons and make sure you know them quite well before moving on. There's also some other areas that they provide, and there's some videos which are very useful. The professor of the class will also send you an email with some helpful links with some additional learning materials. I actually found those quite useful. And there's also an appendix section as well, which also gives you some additional reading. So when you take all that into account, that's a lot of information to try and digest. All I can say is, depending on how well you do on the pre-assessments, that will be your first or next step, if you like. Depends on how much you have to get stuck into the material. If you do really well in the pre-assessment, I would say that I would just touch up on the areas that you weren't quite as strong as, because the truth is the pre-assessment, although it's similar to the objective assessment, it isn't as tough. And I'm sincere when I say that this time. I think it's, if you mark the pre-assessment out of 10, it's probably a 7. And I would say the objective assessment is a 9.5. It's much more difficult, and I think a little bit more detailed. And again, I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment. So definitely dig into the material, watch the videos. Quizlet has some flashcards as well you could possibly use, but make sure you know the material really well. So this particular class is a little different. There's 2 objective assessments, which I've never seen previously. The first one is actually an 11-question lab. Now, if you've done the labs as part of the training, you're going to be okay because a lot of the questions are very similar. So in this type of lab environment, you're going to see diagrams, and they're going to ask you to explain what they represent, or they might ask you to move some things around. It's kind of drag and drop, that type of stuff. So that's the normalization type questions, and the also the conceptual modeling kind of questions. So you'll see some of that. Additionally, there's going to be some questions about, actually, there's like a database simulator, and they'll ask you to type out certain types of commands. Again, the labs are your friend here. Make sure you know the labs. Now, I'm not saying they're exactly the same as the labs, but the questions and the types of commands you're going to have to type out are very similar. Things like creating a table and creating a join and creating a view. These are the kind of things that you might get asked to do. So you get 11 questions, like I said. You get about 2 hours, I think maybe 2.5 hours to do it. So you've got plenty of time. And like I said, as long as you prep well and you know the labs, you should be okay. But it isn't easy. There are some help along the way as well. There were some links that I thought were quite helpful. There's a little link there to do the syntax, so you can see how the different commands are formatted. So they are trying to help you along the way. But trust me, this it isn't easy. I think I scored maybe 90%, something like that. But it is a proctor's exam and it is a little tough. So basically, like I said, know the labs and you should be good to go. The second part of the is basically straight up multiple choice objective assessment. Again, it's 2.5 hours, 58 questions. The only thing I will say here is these questions are harder than the pre-assessment, so don't rely on if you did really well on the pre-assessment, expect to get the same questions. The big thing here is there's a lot of SQL type syntax commands. So this is like the advanced SQL and the regular basic SQL. It is multiple choice. You're not going to be expected to type the commands out, but you're going to see a lot of questions like, from the following examples, which one would fit best in line 3 to provide this output, something like that. So what I'd recommend is really know the different terms, the different functions, DMLs and the DDLs. Make sure you know those and how to create a SQL command using those. Again, the instructor will probably send you a link with some of the ones to focus on, but what's in the material is important, like say for joins and tables and things like that, things I just mentioned. Know that because, like I said, it wasn't easy. I think this class is probably more suited to your kind of in-classroom type experience. This is probably one of those classes that you need an instructor there in a computer lab and you could put your hand up and ask questions type environment. Trying to do it like I did in this type of environment, it is more challenging because you don't quite have the same support, but it can be done. It is in depth. I would thoroughly encourage you just to learn the material, and that's the best way to pass this class. So some other tips to pass the class. Let's talk about that. Well, first of all, I did go ahead and download a copy of MySQL to my laptop. This was really useful because I was able to practice a lot of the different commands like the joins and the creating tables and deleting and dropping deleting rows and dropping tables and things like that. Yeah, it's helpful to like type it out and see how it actually looks on the screen in real life. So I thoroughly or strongly encourage you to do that. The other thing I'd really encourage you to do is take this class and the foundation class back to back. I think that will help you as well because the foundation class really does help set up a lot of this for you. And if you roll in from one to the other, I do think that will help. If you leave it a few months, you might forget some of the stuff that make it more difficult for you. I guess that's obvious, but I would strongly recommend that. Do the labs. I can't say that enough. And definitely review the flashcards and just and also YouTube. If you have any kind of any of the areas that you're studying still don't make sense, and there was a couple that were like that for me. There are lots of videos out there, tutorial videos, and you can watch those, and they might be areas that will maybe help you understand the concepts just a little bit more. That's certainly what I did. So finally, an update on my progress. Well, the truth is it's been a tough couple of weeks for lots of reasons. One, I've started a new role with my job, which has kept me very busy, so I haven't had quite as much time as I had previously. I also had some sickness in the family, including myself, a little bit of burnout, the NFL playoffs, the English Premier League. There's a whole bunch of different reasons, but the bottom line is it's just been tougher for me to fully do enough to get these last few classes done. So I've got 3 classes left and only 8, 9, 10 days left of term 1. So clearly I'm not going to complete it in term 1, and that's okay. I've kind of accepted it. I'm still going to get this degree done, I think, fairly quickly, maybe 7, 8 months. So that's the plan. But anyway, thank you again for all the support. I've got a lot of different messages and encouragement, but I'm just plugging away. And at this point, I just want to get over the line. And it's been a struggle, like I said, but right now, rather than sprinting over the line, I feel like I'm going to fall over the line. And I think a lot of that is simply I'm just tired. I'm burnt out. This is a lot of work. Those people that think this is an easy thing to do to accelerate through a degree program are, well, they're smarter people than me, because the mental strength it takes to keep going, stay focused, keep going is tough. But you can do it. It can be done. It's just that you have to set yourself goals and you just have to keep plugging away, which can be difficult, especially with life. Life happens. But anyway, I think that's a subject for a future video maybe. But anyway, thanks very much. I look forward to speaking to you, and hopefully I'll give you an update in a few days with my latest class. Okay, thank you so much.